Hey everybody, welcome to Afterthoughts for show number 347, Walk-Ins. I'm telling you what, I really enjoy doing this show. It really makes you think. It really makes you wonder, what our souls are for one thing, but two is, do we have multiple souls? I mean, I know in the show that we talked about the guy that I know, and I trust him. I mean, it's not like he made this up. I trust him. He came up to me one day and we started talking about it, and he told me about how when he drowned, he actually, was got out of the hospital and all that, and the first time he saw himself in the mirror, he was a completely different person. And he looked different, he talked different, he thought different, just like we talk about in the episode. Another thing too is I got an email from someone said that they had the same thing happen to them where they were in a car wreck, and they told me that they weren't that badly hurt, but they had the same thing happen to them where they were a completely different person after that. Now, they didn't say that their face changed or anything like that, but they said that they were a completely different person. Now, think about it. If something traumatic like that happens to you and you say that you change your life, is it because of that traumatic thing that happened and you think, I've got to live my life better? Or was it an exit point, and did another soul come into your body that has different feelings and different thoughts? That's something we don't know about. Since the show aired, I've had a few people tell me, we only have one soul. God gives us one soul. And it all depends. I mean, think about it. Like we mentioned in the show, do we? Or do we change? Because people change as they grow up. And as they change, they like different things. They eat different things. Some things that they liked as a kid, they hate now. Is that just a natural progression of our growing up? Or did something change? Did another soul come into our body? Is our body being rented out by the other soul? Just like we mentioned in the episode, there's stories through history that talk about where a soul rents out its body. Does it happen? We don't know. I mean, that's just one of those things where we'll never know until we know. So it's hard to say. I don't know. It's a very interesting topic. One that when I was recording the show with Jen, I was thinking in my mind, I'm like, are these words really coming out of my mouth? Because it was just so interesting to me. And it provokes thought. That's the main thing. And I love it when our show provokes thought, because that's what we're all about. We don't know what happens on the other side. There's a lot of people that say things that happen. There's a lot of people that are psychic and that see things, but we still have to take their word for it because we don't see that. I mean, it's not like a group thing where everybody sees the same thing. But I got a lot of emails and a lot of people talked about this show, and a lot of them were, we only have one soul, and I go back to the same thing I said earlier is, how do we know? How do we know that we only have one soul? How do we know that we don't have souls that come in and change, or even during the exit points, we're still alive because of the fact that another soul came in and took up where the other one left off? So it's hard to say. I don't know. Obviously we don't have the answers, but it's a great topic of thought. What are your thoughts on it? I mean, how do you feel? Do you feel that we possibly have multiple souls coming through our lives, or do we just stick with the one? And then once the one is gone, we pass away. It goes to whatever we call heaven, whatever your religion is, whatever you believe, goes up. But the thing is, you got to think of this too. How many people have been on this earth? How many souls are out there? I've talked to people that said that some souls go to other planets. We don't know. Some souls go into plants or animals. How do we know? But they say that there are certain times when a soul has to go into something. Well, why not shift to another person? The big thing about what we talk about, raising our vibrations and all that stuff, and moving to a higher plane, they say that the souls come back into other bodies as rebirths to learn, to grow. Well, how do we know that we're not just going into another soul or another body to learn that step? And it's not where a person dies per se, but it just switches. Because in religion and in a lot of other types of religions, they say that the soul has to go to another body after it passes, after the soul dies, goes to heaven, is up there for about 75 Earth years, comes back down, and is sort of like reincarnated into another body. Why couldn't it just happen to where it comes up to an exit point and it goes into another body? We don't know. It'd be a great thing to get some religious leaders together and talk about this. Because obviously, like the Catholic religion is going to say, no, you only have one soul, and after you die, that soul goes to heaven and stays in heaven. Where in Buddhism and some other religions, they believe that, and in India is big, is the soul passes away and is either right away reborn into another baby, or the soul goes up to its heaven, finds another earth person or whatever you want to say to inhabit, and goes into that body. That's why in India, I know that that they actually mark the dying person with a birthmark or a mark, and a lot of the reincarnated people have that birthmark on them when they're born, and that's how they know that a lot of these people are reincarnated into another person. That's a soul transfer. That's the same thing as what we were talking about on the show. So who knows? I like I said, I love the topic. I love the fact that we can talk about the topic like that. And I love the fact that there's open-minded people enough out there that could say, well, wait a minute, maybe. Because you can't just think on one plane. You can't just say, God created us, we live 100 years on the earth, and then our soul goes up to heaven and is there for the rest of eternity. I don't know. I don't believe that. Because I do know that there's a thing called soul families, and you are reborn into a body or whatever, and you stick with that soul family. The people that you have been with in the past, you're going to be with in your next lifetime. You may not know them, and they may look different and everything, but their soul is the same. So that's what they call soul families. And the soul families like to stick together. So it's the same people, but it's not so much that, okay, there's this people and this people. It's more like there's this people and then there's another soul family that overlaps and then overlaps. And everybody knows everybody, basically. But yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I really love the fact or the thought of soul transfer, because the whole idea of a soul coming back into a body is to learn and to grow and to become better. So does it? Is that how we grow? Is that how we change? We get older and we get wiser. And are we getting wiser because we're learning more through the soul? I don't know. But I love the show. This week's show I really dig. I mean, I hope you guys really like it too. And like I said, I know I keep going back to it, but it makes you think. It really does. It's one of them shows where we could have roundtable discussions about for days. And I hope we did. That'd be a great thing. If you guys want to get together and talk about this, let's do it. That'd be a blast. Let's have fun and do it. So, anyways, that's the show for this week. Afterthoughts of our show about soul transfer and walk-ins. I mean, we haven't even talked about walk-ins. Walk-ins pretty much, after we done the show, I did some more research, and walk-ins is more common than what we thought. And there are people out there that have attachments, but they're not really attachments, they're walk-ins. So that's a whole nother thing. I mean, we go to these haunted locations and we get attachments, and you got to do your prayer. Even though you're not religious, you still have to say some kind of prayer to tell the spirits that they have to stay where they're at. They cannot follow you, they cannot absorb into your body. Because think about this, we do paranormal investigations and we spend the whole time telling them to come into our equipment, touch this equipment, touch us, come into our thoughts, come into our heads. And then at the end of the night, we're like, you got to stay here. So maybe we need to change up our talk a little bit to where we say, you can use our body for a little bit, or you can use this equipment for now, or something like that. But whenever you leave a paranormal investigation, always do a leaving prayer, whether you're religious or not. It doesn't matter. Mine, I just tell them, I thank them for their time. I say, this is what I do. I always leave the location. I say, hey, thanks for letting me visit. Thanks for communicating with me. I had a lot of fun. I'll be back. You can't come home with me. You cannot, come into my equipment. You cannot follow me home. Stay here. I'll come back and visit you. Because as you know, there's no sense of time on the other side. So to us, we may come back in a year, but to them, it could just be a few seconds. Or it could be a few years, we don't know, but there's really no sense of time on the other side. So when we go to these locations, are we getting walk-ins that we think are attachments? Because if it's an attachment, that's a whole other thing, to where they're attaching themselves to your body. And I've talked to psychics that say that they can actually see that. I had two of them. Melinda Carver, when I first met her, she looked at me and she says, you have attachments. And I'm like, yeah, you think? I'm a walking attachment. But I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And then like a month later, I met another psychic friend of mine, and she said the same thing. So I'm like, well, what can I do about it? And we did some stuff, and I know that when we went to Moundsville, Jen got a bad attachment, and we had an Indian shaman that prayed over us and released the energy. And I did feel better. But anyhow, there's the walk-ins is an interesting thing, because you don't know when that soul walks into your body. It just walks in and takes you over, basically. And people have been accused of being psychopaths and stuff. And you've seen the thing where they do exorcisms. Exorcisms is a big one, because that's an attachment, but it's also a walk-in style attachment where they didn't expect it, or didn't know it, or they didn't have like a trauma, they didn't have a near-death experience, anything like that. People would be just going about their normal day. The walk-in would come in and almost like take over your soul and start controlling your soul, and like a bully holding you down. And then you have to have an exorcism to get that out. And that's what they do. Those are the walk-in styles. So after the show, we learned more things about it. And that's considered walk-in. And those are bad, because you don't know what's happening. You don't, it's just like you're living your daily life, and all of a sudden, bam, you have a walk-in, and you're changing, and your attitude change, your life change, and you don't even realize it. You start, becoming more aggressive, more negative, completely different than your normal self, to where you have to think, wait a minute, something ain't right. And maybe sometimes people don't even realize that something's wrong. They start drinking, they start doing drugs, stuff like that, and it's all because of the walk-in possession that you have. So if you do and it's usually your friends have to tell you, because you don't realize it. You think this is just normal. But if they have a case where you start acting different, and your friends are just saying, man, you've changed. Well, maybe you had a walk-in, and maybe you should check in on that and see if you can find someone that can help you. So anyhow, that's the show for this week. If you haven't seen or listened to the episode, go back and listen to it. It is unbelievable. Even when I was editing it, I was like, oh, this is so cool. So anyhow, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you later.